Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And sorry we're a little bit late this afternoon. Delighted to welcome you all to this 8th episode in a series of informal broadcasts and chats and interviews with interesting guests and personalities called In Conversation With, hosted by myself, Michael McGrath, on behalf of the Muscle Help Foundation charity. As I've said in previous episodes, the mission of these conversations is to help our community of muscle warriors across the country feel less isolated, less alone, and more connected and engaged. Before we start today's conversation titled The Integrated Medicine Toolbox for Maintaining Wellbeing During COVID-19 and Beyond, I just wanted to say a few words about shielding, which popped up in the news today. There was a piece actually written by the BBC's disability correspondent, Nikki Fox, titled Coronavirus, Why Many Are Still Shielding with No End in Sight. I know that many of our beneficiaries and families across the country are indeed still shielding. And for me today, Friday the 21st of August, is day 162. And I know that because of COVID-19, many of you are still not venturing out. Still, you don't have the confidence or the trust to engage or re-engage. And I just wanted to say that I know it's hard. But I also know that actually it's a little more tolerable if we take it just one day at a time. So I'm going to invite today's guest to share her thoughts, give a few coping tips to help all those across the country who are shielding. We'll come on to that shortly. Now, many of you will know that the Muscle Help Foundation charity is operating in a different way, focused, as always, in bringing a little joy and a little magic through our virtual Muscle Dream interventions directly into the homes of our beneficiaries across the country. And we're working hard, really hard, in bringing our tribe of muscle warriors, our community together in, for example, having conversations like this, like we're having this afternoon, conversations that I really, really hope will enlighten and inspire, conversations that we know from previous episodes can also be a little bit of fun. So onwards, a few quick housekeeping points. So firstly, a little note on safeguarding. We have eyes over this broadcast, so if any inappropriate comments or behaviors are observed, we will take action. And secondly, all episodes are recorded and streamed on the charity's Facebook and YouTube channels, so please do check back at any time after today's slot. And as always, you're all invited to get involved and please share. We'd love you to comment, follow, and please do subscribe on the charity's YouTube channel. So, without further ado, let's talk well-being, wellness, and physical health with expert advisor and medical director of NNEdPro, which stands for Need for Nutrition Education Innovation Program. NNEdPro is an independent, not-for-profit social enterprise, and it's based in Cambridge. And it's an organization that's all about advancing and implementing nutrition knowledge to improve health, well-being, and society. And I'm really, really delighted and pleased to provide a warm welcome to Dr. Minha Rajput-Ray. Welcome, Minha. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We made it to Friday.
A very good afternoon, Michael and team. Real delight to be able to join yourselves and the entire community who are able to attend this seminar series, both perhaps live and perhaps also in the recorded versions. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. It's great to have you here with us this afternoon. Before we kick off, Dr. Minha, I happen to know that your favorite movie is none other than Mary Poppins, the sensible English nanny with magical powers. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I have watched Mary Poppins many, many, many times, both by myself and with other family members. I just love the movie. Many, many years, and it has many reflections. Perhaps looking at daily life
We're going to discover your magical powers in this conversation later on, I suspect.
I think we all have a gift. We all have a gift.
And that really, given the opportunity, I think the other thing that we discovered is if you could invite one celebrity to have a pot of tea with you at home, it would be Deepak Chopra.
Oh yes, I'm a great fan of Deepak Chopra.
Yeah, I mean,
the ability to be able to bring together mainstream medicine and holistic care, which is very much the journey that I've been able to follow over the last 2 decades now. And perhaps one needs an appreciation of how this is possible. And I think Dr. Deepak Chopra was able to give the world a unique pathway.
many refer to him, don't they, as a self-help guru, and I know he's a very prominent figure in the New Age movement. Is that right?
Well, and that's an interesting point, Michael. When we talk about the New Age movement, well, technically speaking, what is medicine and what is pioneering medicine? What is personalized medicine? And when I use the word medicine, actually, the word doctor means teacher in Latin. And I happen to be one of these doctors who, yes, is fully medically trained, yet also having trained as an osteopath and naturopath, bringing these themes together. I actually believe that there is no pill for every ill. And there are ways and means in how we can support ourselves and support each other using perhaps innovative strategies. And perhaps if new age is a word to describe it, then so be it.
Dr. Minha, I need to ask, where are you? Where are you on the planet this afternoon?
I'm in Dundee, in Bonnie Dundee in Scotland. And yes, this is where I did my medical training many moons ago. So I relocated back from Cambridge around Christmas time. But of course, I maintain contacts with the team and everybody. I think the world has become so virtual, so it's so easy to do this now.
So just before we kick off proceedings, one of the questions that we asked in our little briefing document was a question that you would like to see actually in our briefing document, and you wrote your favorite song, which I now know is none other than "This Is Me" from The Greatest Showman.
Oh, absolutely. As I said earlier, I believe we all have an individual gift, each and every one of us. And it's not just saying it, it's being able to, perhaps the word would say, find what excites us and then engage in it, and then find a way to entertain ourselves with that notion, and then just, almost explode with happiness. And I use the word, and I know, and people who know me and yourself and Sue and rest of the team, I've always been one of these people who's looked at the glass half full. Now, why do I say that this is important? Because every person has potential, Michael. And I have been through a journey myself where for the people who know me, I was confined to a wheelchair at the age of 18 when I'd had a major accident, fractured femur, various things. Last year, I went through another terrible accident and had multiple injuries. And look, everybody's journey is individual. We have people here who are going to be joining us from an entire continuum. We have families, we have beneficiaries, we have perhaps their carers, we have their friends, or we may have a person who just wants to inform themselves about muscle-related conditions. And what I'm trying to say is that, every person has potential. And part of it, I realize, begins from realizing that this is me. This is who I am, and this is what I have, and I'm going to do the very best I can with what I have. So, and of course, it's a continuum. It is a continuum.
When you say "this is me," it's interesting because I just reminded myself of some of the lyrics in that wonderful film, and there was a few words. I just thought I'd bring it to the conversation. Where it was said, "But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious."
Absolutely. I have to do this for that.
I'm not going to break into song. We're not going to do a sing-along. That would be a first, wouldn't it?
That would be absolutely a first. There you go. You got another idea now for the community. And talking of singing, yes, I'm sure we'll be covering different aspects of the integrated toolbox, which I must say it's not only looking at wishy-washy, things that may be seen to be perhaps, nice and interesting to do. We talk about evidence-based, and then we also talk about evidence-informed practices. And for me, going back to everybody having a gift, everybody having potential, it's about being able to find the synergy in these, and then perhaps being able to, um, do what you want to do
Well,
wholeheartedly.
yeah, I think bringing your whole self to any interactions or conversations with others is key. I think the themes that there were three themes that we were going to
Hmm.
unfold in today's conversation. Should we have a look at the first theme around exploring the dimensions of well-being? This is a word that is used an awful lot, and it'd be interesting to explore your perspectives and your insights.
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you. Now, the whole concept of well-being, perhaps, has become very popular. I use the word popular in big inverted commas, especially since since the start of the COVID pandemic. And in a way, it really made me reflect, going back to what we said about having a gift, being able to have potential, being able to identify this, and be happy. And what really, really came to my mind in terms of being able to bring yourself wholeheartedly is that there is a sense of a locus of control. And I often have thought as to what is it in my life that I can control and what is it that I can't. Now, in general, day to day activities, we can control a lot of things, or we have at least the power, the voice to say what we can perhaps appreciate or not appreciate.
Mm.
But in a way, one thing that has affected everybody in some shape or form, again, there's a continuum, is this ability to be able to do your daily activities. And thank you for talking about shielding. Certainly, that was highlighted today on the BBC. The whole concept of well-being is being able to be well. I mean, it's not rocket science. And talking about mental health, talking about the fact that one feels restricted or confined or is not able to do something is very much looking back at this control diagram. So what I'd invite you to visualize, is a box, perhaps a little round circle, to say, what is it that I can control? I can invite your viewers to maybe make a little box and actually write a few notes down, a few things. And just to give you a few pointers, I can control perhaps my approach, and not always, of course, my approach to things. So let's say there's a lot of information on social media. It's very negative. There's a lot of information on the news. I can limit that. I can do that. I can potentially be able to follow the relevant guidelines, because that means that I'm at least cooperating to ensure
Mm.
that no one's put at harm or risk. And I mean, no one is put at harm or risk, and that's beginning with myself, basically. I can control things like, my own social distancing practice. I can control trying to eat healthy um, as best possible. I can try to do all these things, but what is it that I cannot control? Well, I certainly can't control if other people are not following the rules of social distancing. I can't control if people are not wearing a mask, basically. The actions of others, predicting what's going to happen. I've had, uh, I've heard firsthand examples of people getting very worried going to the supermarket, and I think we've heard this because people worry whether the person in the queue, either in front of them or behind them, has been able to take adequate measures. And the word trust comes into this picture
Mm.
now. And where do we get trust from? I remember what my professor of medicine saying to me, Minha, and this is very early on in my medical training, said to me, Minha, just for a brief moment, just a glimpse moment, think of yourself sitting in that chair that the patient is sitting in the clinic. And if you can imagine, think of yourself not only as a patient, but perhaps, their relative or their carer who's come with them. Um, this is an amazing person who's no more yet. His words really, really, really ring, and it's almost surreal sometimes when I, as a doctor, have found myself. Look, I'm only human, and I found myself getting a bit frustrated, or a little bit sort of, gosh, why are there so many questions being asked, or this is a really complex case, or I'm running a bit behind with clinic. And I ask myself that question, why is this person here to see me? What is it about this consultation? And bearing in mind that every consultation counts, what is it that has triggered a chord in me here? So coming back to trust and control, I think a lot of us have been going through, and I, as a medical professional, have also noticed that, the trust in perhaps the let's go bottom up, grassroots levels. The trust that people in my family are going to be washing their hands, because I have two family members who have been shielding. And Michael, believe you me, if I may say, and I know this is obviously out there. It's live and it's obviously being recorded, but this is the reality. And to be authentic is, I think, important. I've had a member of my family who's found this really, really difficult psychologically, because they're not used to having their life like this. And then that's given us as family members almost like a bit of a situation where we think, gosh, what can we do to make it better? You can buy as many newspapers, perhaps, so to say. This particular family member is not very online savvy, if I was to say, or engaged. So my daughter has tried to make them a little bit more online engaged, but that's brought up a new level of challenges, perhaps. I would say opportunities, but obviously we've had to work through that. Going back to trust, so yeah, my family members make sure that everyone's following all the guidelines, and everybody is the moment people come in, shoes off, spray your boots and or your shoes with the relevant antiseptic or the relevant antiviral spray. Have a quick shower, and it's almost been like we've almost been watching each other subconsciously. Then we talk about perhaps the neighbors. So the children wanted to play. My daughter wanted to play with the neighbors, and I had to restrict her and say, "I'm sorry, but we've got two members in our family who we're shielding. So grow up a little bit now. You're 11 years old, and I'm sorry, but you can't play with the neighbors." And that's been tough. In fact, if I may share, this was around week 9, week 10 of lockdown. So April, May time we're looking at. And my daughter said to me, she said to me, "Mama, how would you feel if you were in a household, with four other children, and you had not seen an adult for 10 weeks?" And it really made me think, because she's an only child. She's got um, me, and she's obviously got grandparents, and it was tough. And she hadn't seen her dad for all this time. It was tough, and therefore going back to trust, seeing things from the other person's perspective. I'm being very organic here and saying that therefore, as a doctor, we're not all going to have the same shoe size, right? I'm being very direct here. When they say put yourself in the shoes of the other person, we're not all going to have the same shoe size. But the point is that just putting ourselves momentarily in that seat can really help us develop what we call empathy. And therefore, coming back to the question, well, this is one of those topics where the dimensions of well-being can be very academically looked at, looking at charts and looking at graphs and looking at measures. But hey, this is me. I'm not a number. I'm not a statistic. I'm a human. I have to say the obvious. I'm a person. I have feelings. I have emotions. And well-being for me, for one person, well-being would be classical music or Radio 4, or equivalent. For another person, it could be rock and jazz. So it's about, again, identifying what works for you as a person. Of course, coming back to the trust and and the 360 perspective is that perhaps if one of us wants to watch the TV and see a certain program, another person might want to see a different program. So that's when the empathy starts coming in, and we have to be very clear with communication. I know it's very easy to say, but honestly, being clear as much as possible in saying, look, this is what I feel I want at this point in
Yeah.
time, what I need, not only want, but I need, and being able to say it to the person who is living in your household can actually be really, really, really helpful.
I think that's I mean, I've just jotted down a few notes here about, things that people can control, the choices that people make about deciding. For example, I've decided that I don't want to watch the news. I try and limit my news consumption. In fact, I have succeeded in limiting my news consumption. So I no longer have a date with Fiona Bruce on BBC Question Time on a Thursday evening. That doesn't work. I just don't want to, get involved in listening to the news in that way. And one of the little devices that, within the context of my own family, is Sue, my wife, went out and procured a new shower curtain for my wet room. We've since renamed my wet room the Beach Hut. The Beach Hut, because I love shells and pictures of the sea. And so she's bought this new shower curtain filled with beautiful shells and sand and the sea and so on. And so I said, I'm going to my beach hut now, have a shower. And the little devices that can make such a difference. And then the subject of trust. Trust is an interesting one, because I was chatting to somebody recently about going to restaurants. And at the moment, a lot of people that I know are not going to restaurants, but there are people who are beginning to go into restaurants, and they're busy places. Um, any thoughts that you wanted to add, just in terms of trusting the operators, in terms of the interactions between waiters and waitresses, and the operators, and food and delivery of food and so on?
Well, first of all, Michael, thank you for the share on the beach hut. In fact, I was going to say that we had a very similar moment where my daughter wanted to go camping. Of course, we're not allowed to go camping, so we managed to procure a tent from a local retailer, and actually we first did camping in the living room, because the weather was not very good a few months ago here. We do have our days of rain and cold, and then we managed to do a little moment that was like 3 hours out in the garden area, and we were very lucky to do that. So what you just described there is being able to make the best use of your situation, be innovative, and actually use a little bit of sparkle. If I was to say imagination, say, right, this is it. A little tip that I've used is that I only wear my jacket, when I'm doing anything that's work related or clinical or official. At other times, I'm around the house, and I'm me, going back to being me, where I almost have to put on a different suit, so to say, a different way of being, and that enables me to perhaps almost literally change hats from one to the other. And if this helps anybody, that could really
We've got a little note that's come into the chat room, around, said that we're all going through the same storm but in different boats. Liking the boat analogy. What strategies can you suggest for believing that our own individual boat will get us to the other side, or should we just be enjoying the cruise?
Well, that's a beautiful question, and thank you for that. This perhaps brings me to the concept of the Batari box, and going back to the topic of today being an integrated toolbox kit. So I've already talked about what we can control, what we can't control. Worthwhile doing a little exercise, in addition to the controlling and not controlling factors, so to say, people, places, etc. So the Batari box is an approach that basically says that my attitude will govern my behavior. My behavior will govern your attitude. Your attitude will govern your behavior. And then your behavior will govern my attitude. So I'll just give you a practical example.
Mm.
For those of us who are perhaps online, well, Michael, I think you and I can perhaps, if we do a bit of I hadn't told you about this, of course. So this is this is very very basic. It's a bit of a demo, and I think this might be able to illustrate the point. So, um, are you ready for it, Michael?
Yeah, yep, absolutely, all there. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, okay, I can assure you, it's been risk assessed, and of course, it's what we do in daily interactions, and this is quite
Okay.
relevant. So, can you smile at me, please? Thank you. We smile back, even with the potential sort of 1 second lag time. Okay, can you frown at me? You never have, but there you go. Okay, and I think our viewers perhaps can do this, with family members if they happen to be there, or even the camera yourself. Okay, now let's end it on a good note. Yeah, let's smile at each other. Smile. Now, therefore, I'm feeling in a good space at this moment, so I happen to smile to you, and I presume you appreciate my gesture of momentary sort of like acknowledging that I'm happy. Therefore, you smile back. And because you smile back, I smile back again. And therefore, coming back to this question, uh, there's another caveat to add to this. In fact, I shall put that in part B of this. Therefore, so what strategies can you suggest for believing that our own individual boat will get us to the other side? So therefore, the question is, what is the definition of the other side? And this is a very individual dialogue with oneself. So I'm presuming when we talk about other side, ideally the far end of the other side will be really this all being sorted out and us going back to life as it was, perhaps, let's say, in January this year.
Mm.
The other side would be come Christmas, all going well, that we're able to be with our families, and that we could do the normal things that we've done for Christmas every single year in year out, without even really thinking about it. Yet there is a sense of grieving that's going on at some level. I actually did a survey with fellow colleagues from the International Commission on Occupational Health, because my medical specialty is that as an occupational and disability physician. And this was actually looking at the healthcare professionals who obviously have several years of experience and training with regards to looking after patients who have various both life-limiting and, of course, life-threatening conditions. And I would like to refer to the Kubler-Ros change curve. And please forgive me if I'm saying something that some of your viewers already are familiar with. The Kubler-Ross change curve talks about any kind of news or any kind of information and how it's processed. So we initially have this moment of shock, and technically speaking, this is quite transferable to a number of life situations, including when the initial announcements went out to say that there's this virus and it's coming our way. People are like, oh, really? Gosh. And of course, people will be shocked or surprised depending on their knowledge, experience. I wouldn't say much because, of course, who had experienced this before. Maybe somebody who's worked in infectious diseases and has had some, sense of very, very unique experience would have potentially thought, okay, right. But for the majority of us, we were a bit shocked. Okay. But then we also go into disbelief, or we go into denial as stage 2. So stage 1 being shock. And this is going back to our own boat, our emotional boat. So shock, then we have denial, then we have frustration, because we suddenly think, gosh, if there's going to be a lockdown, if they're going to stop this, that, the other, how am I going to get my medication? I remember going to the chemist at the end hour to get medication for my dad. Because I thought, gosh, what if you're going to run out of medication? So frustration. And then that's when we had, people filling in their car tanks and, things going off the supermarket shelves, etc., etc. And for the people who perhaps couldn't get there early enough or couldn't get there fast enough for whatever reason, I think some members of our community would have been affected there. They had people, other people who were trying to scramble work and trying to stock up on supplies. So frustration. So we had shock, denial, frustration. Then we have depression, because suddenly when lockdown came along, the morale completely dipped, and all the news, kept on talking about ghost town, everything's lockdown, lockdown, and almost like sort of reinforcing that low mood, lacking in energy. And then people started to experiment and engage. That's the next point. So this is when we saw, local groups come together, community groups come together, yourselves who incredibly, I use the word pivot, pivoted, from being able to do what do very incredibly, with providing those life happy moments to beneficiaries. And you started going online and having, for example, a series here. So experimenting, we had people starting to print 3D masks. We had people, go to the local food bank and say, what is it that we can do to reach out to members of our community who may not be able to go to the supermarket? A whole load of things. And then we started doing, clapping for, frontline workers, something that perhaps we've never done before per se. And therefore, going back to our boat and getting us to the other side, people started doing this at different rates. It's a bit like, being like in a dingy versus being in a mini sort of paddle boat, with being in a speedboat, or then being in sort of like a cruise liner. So I think that's not meant to be a pun, but should we just be enjoying the cruise? But I hope we're getting the gist of what I'm trying to say here. We do it at a different rate, different pace. So shock, denial, frustration, depression, and experiment. And then we start going into decision making. And some people say, okay, right, I've got a strategy here. My neighbor's going to do this for me. My the so and so will do this for me. I've spoken to the postman or the postwoman, and this is where we're going to leave the mail. People start going into decision mode. It's a bit like, and I can see some questions coming through here. Are these the same or parallel stages you go through bereavement? Actually, the answer is yes. Yes, yes. At the stage of decision, so what song will be played at the funeral? These kinds of questions are asked, and people have obviously been through the first few stages to come to that level of almost like engagement of right brain and left brain, to say, hang on, okay, well, we need to do this. This needs to be done. We need to be there at a certain time. We need to plan, etc., etc. So that's decision. And then after decision, where we've learned how to perhaps work in the new situation, feel a little bit more positive about things, that's when if and when a wobbly comes along, it's very possible to go back a few steps. And when we talk about wobbly, so we talk about areas that were partially opening up, suddenly be put into lockdown, for example. Or then we have for a number of reasons, uncertainty about how is it that we're going to get out of this, because other people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. The R number at the right level, for example. Then we start to think to ourselves, what is it that I'm going to have to now live with for the foreseeable future? And therefore, coming back to the question about our individual boat, number one, what is the other side? You see, what I realize is that, and I think we all know this at some level, there's no rewind button in life. I was actually almost, I was longingly thinking about a meal out I'd had, with my family in February. It was my daughter's birthday, and how casually I thought about that meal, and it was almost like, oh well, gosh, it's a meal out, with a family, and it's a birthday, yes, but it was almost like one of those norm things. And how I almost started thinking to myself, gosh, that would be a really special thing to do now, a really, really special thing to do now, because I haven't really done it. And therefore, talking about, what is the other side? Let's perhaps all set ourselves a few goals as to, what is it that's going to be meaningful for me as a person, as an individual, going back to this is me. So could it be the fact that you can go with your family member for a nice walk? Some of us are probably already doing that, at a quieter time of the day, perhaps, or we're doing it, in spaces that we know where we're going to get more sensible people, people who are going to maintain their social distance. that can be a useful way of looking at it. So yeah, so setting ourselves some goals can help us to see what exactly is going to be at the other side. Also, being able to find one little meaningful thing to do every single day. And I think this perhaps has been covered before. Uh, People talk about it, but it's something that will basically, going back to exciting, engaging you, and I use the word, make you uh, uh, make you almost like sort of uh, I was going to use a technical term here. It's a bit like the endocrine system, the happy hormones. What is it that's going to help you to bring out the happy hormone in you? And for some people, so I actually developed, and for the first time in my life, I must say, I grew a tomato plant from seed. And this is the first time I ever did this.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very happy moment when I suddenly saw that tomato come through. And now I know how to grow a tomato plant. And it was just from a seed. It was something that, it was a tomato that wasn't very good. I used half of it for the salad. I just put the other in a bit of soil, and I just let it be, so to say. And the moment I saw the first bud shooting, I thought, gosh, this is very nice. And that grew into sort of a few other bits and pieces. And now they call me farmer at home because it's a bit of a nickname. Yes, being able to do something engaging. I've had people who have come into the creative form. People who have done something very basic, yet it's given them a great sense of mini achievement.
I think that idea, if that I'm just thinking about our community and our beneficiaries and our families, our young people, who are at home, and this idea of doing one thing during the day. I'm finding myself using the phrase being in the moment. I'm using that phrase much more frequently,
Oh
and
yes.
so when I'm having, breakfast or a snack for lunch, or just listening to a beautiful piece of music that uplifts me in that moment, I don't want to be distracted in any way, shape, or form. I just want to be in the moment and really soak it in and drink it in, if you like. And those things can be very simple things, whether it's growing a tomato or listening to a piece of music, just lifts your spirit. Yeah.
It does indeed, Michael. And in fact, if I may, I'm just looking at the question here where it says, so we took lots of things for granted. How can we redefine the future to make it exciting rather than terrifying? Well, I want to say that this particular listener has perhaps been reading my mind, because remember I said that that there is no rewind button, and technically speaking, we don't really have a crystal ball.
Mm.
I mean, in reality. So where are we? We are in this moment. We are here and now. And
Yeah.
what I managed to find, and this is it's a really sort of a very basic way of doing things, and of course you can get these all over the place. I basically found one of these. It's a little compliment book, and it was actually from one of these, bookshops, but you can get it from all sorts of retailers.
Mm.
Basically, it has like a little check that sort of you can write to a person in your family, and it has things like this. You're wonderful
Yeah.
in every single way. Now, look,
Yeah.
I'm a very practical, a very down to earth strategy. There's one quite fun one. That's that one, control of the TV remote. Or then look, everybody, in their family can be able to perhaps do something like this. Like this, a movie night in. And why am I sort of using this as a almost like a prop? And look, I have no particular interest in this particular type. It just happens to be a generic one that I happen to have got. Why is it that this is a little prop almost? Because when you write this little check and you give it to the person, and you sort of have like a little prize associated with it, or you could write it on a piece of paper, it almost creates a certain level of number one, appreciation.
Mm.
It develops and it demonstrates both demonstrates and develops a certain degree of empathy to say, look, I'm thinking about you, perhaps. And it also shows a little bit of gratitude, which I see has just come through as another comment, in which you record one thing each day. Absolutely. I mean, here our community, the community here is is incredibly resilient, if I was to use that word. You
Mm.
know, resilient is used in lots of different notions. Of course, the corporate world have taken it to another level. If I can see your expression there, Michael. But the point is that being resilient is very important. Now, we say this, but doing it in real life, you know, when the chips are down, that's where these little tips can really make a difference.
Can I just jump on? I'm just conscious that time is ticking on, and I'm really loving this conversation, as covering an awful lot of ground in a relatively short period of time. But for our audience today, we'll make a little note, and we'll include it in terms of the Kubler-Ros change curve. I think it'd be really interesting to learn a little bit more about that. I was just thinking about our community in terms of, where and I'm not going to second guess where they're at. I can only think about myself and the journey that I've gone through in terms of that particular curve, in terms of denial, frustration, depression, engaging, experimenting, and decision making. What was the one after decision making,
Ah,
Dr. Minha?
integration.
Integration. Okay.
And so this is
So,
where, you know, should this situation be far extended beyond, you know, a certain timeline, then people will really have to, you know, almost sort of work on these long-term strategies, going back to, you know, to where is it that, you know, or what is it that we can do, or maybe we, you know, we can go out at certain times, going back to the question about, you know, what is the other side, or maybe, you know, we'll only go to a certain supermarket where we know they have good hygienic, extra hygienic practices. What I did is, I spoke to my the shop floor manager, and I just double checked. And maybe I was being a bit excessive, perhaps. I did apologize in advance, but what I did do is I took a bottle of spray, and I would say, look, just give me the spray and the wipe, and I'll wipe down the conveyor belt a little bit more, you know, once again, just before my items are put onto the conveyor belt. And people will reasonably understand this in most of the situations, although I did have one pretty bad supermarket experience, when the person could just not see the point, because they said, "Oh, we clean our belts regularly," but I could
mm,
see that it was quite filthy. And going back to
mm.
trust, you know, I haven't used that supermarket again. So
I think again, all the organizations or the brands that have acted responsibly are the ones that are going to be remembered going forwards in the future. I think there's a question that's come in, which is around a personal sense of purpose, and having, how important is it that we have a sense of purpose? For me, that in some ways goes back to the point you were making earlier about, almost like having a goal each day, and that link with goal and purpose. I think is I'd be interested to know what your perspective is, and also around spontaneity. So the thing, when I saw that question come into the chat room here, I immediately thought of this idea of phoning somebody that you wouldn't otherwise ordinarily speak to on a regular basis, and just say, "Hi, how you doing?" Just have a conversation. Pick up the phone.
absolutely, 3 points here. 3 points here, in the time that we have. So every day, I see myself waking up in the morning, and yes, you have a diary or you have things to do, um, etc., etc. So I set an expectation. First of all, I check in with myself. I ask my question to myself. If I would say, you know, you have a battery that's got 100% charge. So let's visualize a battery with 100% charge. And I ask myself the question, how much charge do I have in me today? And the charge is on two levels,
Yeah.
and this is very important. Physically, you know, do I feel a bit knackered? Have I had enough sleep? And also psychologically. Once I find out, well, I sort of, you know, I put a little number to it, you know, and you can do it however you'd like to do it. I set my expectation for the day, and I say to myself that I hope to do X, Y, Z. So going back to the sense of purpose, and I almost like make a little sort of dialogue with myself and say, right, Minha, you have these number of jobs to do. Basically, your charge is today 70% for whatever reason. Please, please remain calm with yourself. You know, if you cannot do all of these jobs, and it's not to say that, you know, it's an excuse to not do all these jobs, but
Mm,
I give myself a little bit of permission, a little bit of space. And then basically the whole day goes through as an experience. You know, so we wake up in the morning with expectations, so that's, you know, so the morning is basically expectations, and in the evening we have an experience, and that's been our day. and to be able to journal that and document that,
Yeah.
and ideally to be able to have gratitude for a good deed either one has done or that another person has shown to us in some shape or form. When I say another person, I also include pets here. That's
Okay,
important.
good.
That's important. Then that allows that the level of spontaneity to come through, because what can sometimes happen is we can become so regimented in saying, okay, today is the 21st of August, it's 7:30 a.m. I have to do X, Y, and Z, and if I don't do it, I'm going to feel bad and I'm going to feel frustrated and I'm going to psychologically punish myself.
Mm.
And believe you me, I think we've all been there, and it's very, 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 it can become very addictive, actually, having this, and especially when you don't have control over other factors. So, yep. So just to recap, morning check-in on
Yep.
your body, to double check that how are you physically and psychologically. Set your expectation. So that's the first one, the battery bit. Set your expectation for the day realistically. And then at the end of the day, reflect on your experience,
Mm.
do a gratitude diary, or even a line perhaps, and be able to, if you can, put in something meaningful, purposeful, and happy uh, in this.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I'm loving the battery barometer expectation thing. I'm liking that very much. Um, so I think time is ticking along. We've got about another 10 minutes or so. Um, and there's a question just popped in, which I think I'd like to address if we could, Dr. Minha, around recharging yourself when holidays are a near impossibility. So any thoughts or perspectives on how we can recharge ourselves briefly?
Absolutely, absolutely. So in terms of a well-being exercise, the one little nugget that I'd like to share here is being able to be aware of your breathing. And again, it's nothing that is perhaps needing any equipment per se. You don't need any fancy gadgets. Uh, Being able to take a few moments and listen to perhaps some music that you like. I always say it's about what you like. It doesn't have to be fanciful music, it's about what you like. And just being able to say to yourself that, yes, if you are aware of any yoga practices, and there are a whole myriad of practices. I mean, there are lots of trained yoga instructors out there, who are extremely competent at being able to take you through. Should you wish to join an online yoga class, that's a great idea, because it actually gives you a change of scenery. When I say metaphorically, a change of scenery,
Mm.
so to say. I found myself also, um, I talked about this earlier, being able to uh, um, uh, focus on my breathing, and again check in, just maybe just asking yourself, morning, lunch, and dinner, or whenever you have a meal, just check in for a moment and see, so where am I today, where am I
Mm.
right now. And that could be a really big positive nudge, and that's the
Mm.
other word we use. It's, you don't have to do everything at the same time. As I say, it's about nudging things and doing things that will enable you to get a little bit more improvement than you last checked yourself in with. And
Somebody's mentioned.
even if it means going and having a glass of water, because that means that you're a bit more hydrated than the last time you checked in with yourself. I've seen a comment, Yoga Nidra would work for our community. Yoga Nidra is really the science of breathing, and yoga based on breath. So again, you have lots of good classes there, which can be very helpful. And please be aware of sleep. That's the other thing I was going to say. Sleep has always been this, the enemy of, of anybody who wants to be doing anything purposeful. Oh no, no, I don't have time. I don't have time for sleeping. No, sleep is important because it does help. It helps with your immunity. It helps with your well-being. It helps, with your overall sleep cycle. Little small tip is, as the days get a bit shorter now, we might find ourselves being able to invest in a lamp, in a light lamp. Some people already have that, because that can really help, just to keep our sleep cycles a little bit more systematic as well.
I've got. Thank you so much. I think we could probably keep this conversation going for at least another hour or two, and probably up until sort of 6 or 7 o'clock. Who knows? But I've got a final question for you. In fact, no, I'm going to take another question here, which is two questions coming to Dr. Mina. One is, would you share, please, with our with our audience, one or two goals or aspirations that you would like to achieve in your life.
Oh, Michael, the word actually, I'm going to finish on a positive note, but there's going to be a slight philosophical note to that, if I may, very briefly. I realize the word die empty is very important. And I know we're talking about life here, but actually in being able to live a fulfilled life, then, one can perhaps, going back to goals and aspirations that I want to lead in my life or achieve in my life. For me, it's being able to know that I did the best that I could, and I was able to give my best professionally and personally.
Well,
So when on the day that I have my funeral, so to say, that I know that I really, really utilize all the resources that were made available to me in the best way possible. And I think my longer term professional goal is definitely having a sustainable model of integrated healthcare.
thank you. I've got one final question to close off this wonderful conversation. Dr. Minha, who makes you laugh the most in your life?
Oh, it's definitely our 11-year-old daughter. That's for sure. That's very much the case. Children, as we know, Michael, can often help us realize parts of ourselves that perhaps unbeknown to us. So yeah, that's the case there.
Wonderful. I'd like to draw the conversation to close by just saying a huge thank you, Dr. Minha, for being such a wonderful guest and for giving so generously of your time this afternoon. Thank you. And if I can invite you, please, to give your best muscle warrior salute, please, Dr. Minha. Great stuff. And if people wish to, whilst we have this going, thank you. And if people wish to contact you, they can presumably reach you via the email address that we're just going to pop up on the screen now. And there it is. That's great. And before we finish up, I'd love to get everyone's feedback. So please, please, please do, in the usual way, head to the charity's Facebook page, where you'll find a Survey Monkey link. 30 seconds, just 30 seconds of your time, please. And any comments so that we can improve the next broadcast experience going forwards. That would be amazing. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, or you've actually got something from today's episode, you've jotted down some takeaways and you're going to apply some of those insights, we'd love to hear about it. I'd be really, really grateful as well if you might consider perhaps making a donation to the charity. You'll be helping us to continue to grow our virtual efforts in supporting our community. And thank you. And for those that wish to simply learn more about our work, head over to musclehelp.com, where you can learn more about our work and our impact, what we're doing at the moment, and indeed how you can get involved. And for our beneficiaries and families this afternoon across the country who've tuned in today, thank you so much. And don't forget to reach out with any suggestions as to how we can support you at this time moving forwards, please. And if you know someone who you think would like to participate in a future In Conversation With episode, do please get in touch and let us know. And finally, it's that drum roll moment. Drum roll. Brrr, be sure you tune in for episode 9. We're taking a little bit of a break, a little bit of a breather, but we'll be back on Friday, the 18th of September for episode 9. And there's the diary date alert, when we'll be having a chat with one of our patrons, none other than Scottish television presenter who's presented various shows for ITV, including GMTV, This Morning, Daybreak, Good Morning Britain. And you know what? We both have a love of these chaps, penguins. And also, we're going to be talking about our respective heroes, that great Irish polar explorer, Sir Ernest Shackleton. So please be sure that you pop the date in the diary. That's Friday, the 18th of September. But for now, please stay safe, stay well, cherish your loved ones. And until next time, once again, big thanks to Dr. Minha Rajput-Ray and to Grace and Jeremy and Sue, my colleagues in the studio, for supporting this afternoon's broadcast. Have a lovely, lovely weekend, all of you. Thank you so much, and bye-bye for now.